Hello and welcome back to DevSpot. It's been a couple months since I've made a video, and I think I've got a good one here for you guys today. So we're going to work on a contact me form. This one's a super easy way to do it using a bunch of Amazon services. We're going to use Amazon's simple email service. We're going to use a Lambda function. We're going to use API gateway, and I'll show you how to use Postman to do some sample requests to your API gateway. And yeah, we can get this going. So based on looking through my videos, it looks like my most popular one has been how to build a portfolio website with Vue.js. And in that video, I didn't really go over how to actually make a contact form, which can be pretty useful. So this is my personal website that I use on my resume, and this is the contact form that I set up for it. It's super simple. All you do is you can add some sample text in here and send it. And then you'll see that we get a little alert saying, hey, the email was sent. We can close that. And I have it on a closed loop, basically, so I'm emailing myself. So here you can see if somebody wanted to contact me, they can send me their name, their email, and a message that they'd like to send. So this is kind of the overview of what we're going to be making today. And I'll show you, I'll go over all the different Amazon services we're going to use. So all you have to do to get this going is set up a verified identity on the Amazon simple email service. So I have two here. I'll show you how to do that. And then we're going to create a Lambda function. Let me click the correct one. So we're going to create a Lambda function similar to this. We're going to create an endpoint called send email. It's going to be a post request, and you're going to be able to parse through all that information and send it to an email. All right, so let's go ahead. First things first is setting up our identity, setting up our email. So this one's actually pretty easy. You can pick your email of choice. I've been using Gmail for mine, and all you're going to do is come in here, click email address, enter whatever email address it is you want to use, and then go ahead and create identity. And then that's going to pull you to the next page that'll say, hey, just verify some information. You'll get an email to that email and walk through all of that. They make that pretty easy, so I don't feel like I need to go over that. If you do get stuck on this, just comment down below and I can clarify for you. Okay. Oh, actually, before we get into that, I want to show you, we're also going to go over how to use Postman. Postman is great because this is going to be our API endpoint that we use to actually send an email, and we're going to send a JSON body. There's no authorization or anything, so we're just going to send a JSON body here, so you can actually test here. So I'll show you this. Test, test, test. And then once we click send, we should get some kind of response metadata here. Go back to our email. Sometimes it sends to the spam, and then this is the new one we just sent, test, test, test. Okay. So I think the first step is going to be, actually, you know what? I'll walk you through how to actually set up an email. So let's go through that. So we're back at our simple email service page here, and I'm going to use my other email that I have. Okay, so we have that, and then we're going to go ahead and click create identity. And now it's going to come over here and it's going to say verification is pending, and that is because we should have received an email. And I'm going to actually pull this off the screen. I don't think I need to share all of my emails with you. So all you're going to see is Amazon's going to send you a verification link. You're going to click that link, and it's going to say, hey, you're all set up. Let's refresh this, and we've got a verified email here. Okay, pretty slick. Let's send a test email up here, and let's choose a scenario. So we're going to send a custom address because we're going to send an email address to ourselves. Okay, and let's send a test email. It says it successfully was sent. Let's check that. Sure enough, right there, we got a test email. Okay, so there you go. You have an email verified identity in your Amazon SES. So now we can actually go through and start creating Lambda functions and API gateways to actually kind of create this closed loop of a contact form. So let's go to our Lambda functions here. So all you're going to do is go to AWS, type in Lambda, and we're going to create a function here. We're going to call this contact form. It's going to be a Node.js runtime. This is all fine. We're not going to mess with any of the settings. You don't need to mess with any advanced settings. And just go ahead and create this function. And there we go. So we have successfully created a Lambda function. You can see here it's got very minimal code to it, and we're going to kind of beef that up a little bit, and I'll walk you through how to do that. So let's pull. Come on. Sorry, my computer's lagging out there. Okay, so let's go back here. I will pull this one over here. Okay, so to actually start configuring this, we're going to want to initialize some different things that we need here at the top of our Lambda function. So we are going to need our access to the AWS SDK. So to do that, we're going to create a const up here. We're going to call it AWS, and we're going to set that to require our AWS SDK. And also, one thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you're working in the same region here. I'm in US East 2, so we are going to set up our config to that AWS US East 2. So you do that by doing aws.config.update, and we're going to pass it in an object of region, and that was US East 2. I kind of have a little cheat sheet on the side over here so that I don't screw up too much here. And that's all we're going to need for that. And we're going to actually create a path here for us that we're going to use to check when we send a request to this Lambda function from the API gateway that we're going to create. So here is something I just copy and pasted in. This is going to be the /send email path that we're going to call to actually send the email information to the verified identity that we just created. Okay. And then to actually get access to the Amazon simple email services, all you're going to do is you can copy the code that I just pasted there. You're going to work, so from the AWS SDK, you're going to access the SES. Everything you'll need from the SES comes from right here. We're going to assign that to this SES variable, and again, remember what region you're working in, and you want that to be the same. Okay. And let's go ahead and let's get rid of all of this, to be honest. Okay, so we have our event handler there, and I'm going to go ahead and start kind of creating our switch case statement here that I like to use to check the endpoints. So let's set our response variable at the top here. That'll come in handy in a sec. And we'll just do switch true. And let's have a case be, we want to check our event. So when you're calling your Lambda function, it's event based. So you're going to be checking this event that you're calling. And we're going to want to check what HTTP method we're using. And we will set that up later on, but we know right now we're going to use a post method. So we're going to check for a post method, and we want to check what the event path is. And we set that up at the top there, and that was that /send email. Okay. So the event path equal to our send email path. So if that is the case, then we are going to want to create a response. And let's actually come down here and create a response method. Okay, sorry, I accidentally clicked the wrong button there. Okay, so let's come down and create the response return method. So to actually do this, we're going to want to return, I'll just copy and paste it in. I don't think you need to see me write all of this. I'll walk through what each part does though. Okay, so we just created a function down here, and we're going to call it response return. It's going to take a status code, and it's going to take a body. Okay, so we're going to return a status code, and these are all the different headers that you need to set up so that it returns properly. And then within the body, we're just going to send some JSON. Okay, so now if we look at the actual send email method that we need to set up, this is where you actually start using the SES functionality. Okay, so we're going to create an asynchronous function called send email. This send email is going to have a request body, and that's going to have like the body of the email that the person sent, their name, their email. Okay, so I'm going to set all those variables up. So we have a body text, and that is equal to our request body that we're passing in, right? And we're going to set that to body text. Okay, and I'm going to copy the rest in. And Control-C. Okay, so there's all of the different variables that are passed in to this request body. So if you're tracking along here, I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. So we have, where did my little, oh, it's over here, sorry. So we have our Postman here. So that request body is this right here. Okay, so that's kind of the connection between the two. So this is our request body, this is the body text. So when you're sending that information to your Lambda function, this is the body text. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of, some of this gets a little confusing because you have so many different parts that are connected to each other. But anyways, so this is an actual structure that SES uses. So we're going to create some parameters, and we're going to set this equal to an object. Oops, let's Control-Z. Okay, so we have our parameters here. We're going to want to set our destination. And this can actually be multiple emails, but we're just setting it up to be ours. So let's set this to, so this is going to be an array with one item in it. So we're going to set that to 2 addresses. And we just set it up with my personal email, but I'll continue, actually, yeah, whatever. I'll set it up with my personal one. Blake.p.preston@gmail.com. Okay. So that is our destination address that we're going to send to. And this next part is going to be the message that you send. And it is also an object. And this is where we're going to actually pull in all of these variables that we pulled in from the request body, so that when the person sends this information, it'll send in the message of the email. So let's go ahead. I will just copy. So we have our message with a body and a subject. Okay, actually I'll walk through that. Okay, so in our message, you can have a body, and our body in this case is going to be text. So you can actually send HTML, and I think you can send a few other things in the body of the message, whatever your email accepts. I think you might have to tinker around depending on what email service you're actually using. And then you can set the subject of the email, so the actual subject that you'll see when you receive the email, to whatever you like. I'm going to set it to new inquiry from site. And then the source of the email is going to also be the same exact email as our destination, because like I said before, this is kind of our little closed loop little contact form. So the source is going to be, oh, that's my other email. But this would actually work too if you wanted to send it to 2 separate emails. Okay, so we have our source set up there, and then we're going to actually set up a little try block down here to try to send that email. So let's go ahead and do try. We're going to set a const to data and await. So SES dot. So there's a method in SES that is send email. Okay, and this method function takes our parameters that we just set up. So this right here is coming from our imported SES, right? And this method here takes the parameters that we set in, which we are passing information from the request body. So hopefully that is all making sense to you. You understand where the data is coming from. And this is a promise. We'll leave that promise. And we are going to return with our response return method that we set up previously. And that'll be with a status of 200 saying, hey, this was successfully sent, and we'll just return whatever data that method returns, which I showed you is just some like kind of random metadata, so you could clean that up if you want. I personally don't care because it's my personal site And all I care is that I get the emails. Oops, did I add too many brackets? Possibly. Okay. So catch, and if we get an error, we'll just return with a status of 500 or 400. We'll do 400 and error. All right. So that is our send email method set up. And now let's go ahead and come back up to our switch case statement up here. So if we end up getting a request to this Lambda function that is a post method with an event path of send email, we want to respond with our send email function. And that was an asynchronous function, so we're going to await that with send email. And this send email is wanting a request body. So the way that you get this request body is you want to parse the event body, okay? So we want to parse this into JSON. We're going to parse, so JSON.parse, and then you pass in the event, which is right here. The entire sort of main component of this Lambda function is the entire event. So we're going to check that event body, and we're going to parse that, and that allows us to actually pull out all that information here, okay? And we'll add a break, and then I'll add, actually let me put a little default case in case something goes wrong. Response, and we will do a 404 for that. Response, return 404. Uh-oh, how's that work? Okay. And we will return whatever the response was. Okay. So now we have, hopefully, a functioning Lambda function that will send an email to our verified identity. Okay, so let's deploy this. Make sure that anytime you update your Lambda function, you deploy it. If you don't deploy it, none of the things that you just set up are going to actually take place or have any effect. Okay, so now you're going to see here, this is our function overview, but you'll notice we don't have an API gateway set up. And the way that we're going to access this Lambda function is using an API gateway. So let's go ahead and come back over here. We're going to create an API. And we are going to create, let's do a REST API. Okay, so we have a REST API. It's a new API. API name, let's go with contact form. What's the description? This is a contact form for my site. We got regional. Yeah, that works. So let's create that API. I skipped a step somewhere in here. Oh wait, no, we're good. We're good. Let's create a resource, and this is going to be our send email resource. So if we come back to our Lambda function, we're looking for this send email. So on our API gateway, we want this to also be send email. And we're going to enable API gateway CORS. This helps alleviate any CORS issues you might have. And let's go ahead and create this resource. So this is going to create an endpoint on our API called send email that we can actually access with a method that we're going to create. So make sure you come over to your resource here, you click it, come to actions, create method, and like I said before, this is going to be a post method, check mark. And this is where you actually integrate that with the Lambda function. I got ahead of myself earlier. So let's go ahead, I can't remember what this does. Let's click that for now and see what happens. I can't remember. So let's do contact form. So if you're in the correct region, you should see that Lambda function pop up. So let's say I accidentally click US East 1. I don't have any in there, so it's going to let me know. But you won't see your function if you're in the wrong region. So this is contact form, and there it is. Okay, and let's go ahead and save that. And okay. And perfect. So we have an API running. Let's go ahead, and you're going to want to also deploy this API. Same with how you got to deploy your Lambda function. You also need to deploy your API. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a new stage. We'll call this production. I don't need any descriptions. And there we go. So we have our invoke URL here. So if you actually want to use this API, you have to use your invoke URL. So let me pull up Postman again, and you're going to see an error here. So I'll kind of walk through what that's all about. So Postman's great. You can come in here. This is a post request. If you don't use it, you can use it in your web here, or you can download it. For some reason, it wasn't opening for me, so I wanted to make this video really quick. So I just opened it in my browser. So you put in your invoke URL. You want to make sure you do /send email. That's the endpoint we just created. And in the body, let's go with raw, and you're going to want to set it as JSON. Okay. And I actually have a right here. So just go ahead and copy this exact structure here. Make sure you've got quotations around your different keys here, and set some different elements in there, and you should be able to send some information. So I have a feeling this is not going to work. I didn't add any permissions to the user role for that Lambda function. So let's just see. This might say like you're missing your authentication token or something. Let's see. Internal server error. Yep, so that makes sense. So when you actually create these Lambda functions, you need to add permissions. So let's actually make sure we connected our API to it. And yep, so there you go. You can see that we have a connection between these two, so we know that these are connected. And now the only problem we're having is we're getting a 502. You might be like, why are we getting a 502? I don't understand. Well, it's because you actually have to come in and add permissions. So if I'm remembering correctly, let me look into this really quick. Okay, I pause it really quick. I want to try to work through this as much as possible, so that kind of my confusions, I'm sure you'll run into some problems too. So you're going to want to go to your IAM. So all of your user roles are going to be in this IAM section. And this is where AWS creates these different user roles when you create your Lambda functions. So let's go and check. Let's go ahead and check my roles. Okay. So I've most likely created a role when I created the contact form. So if you look here, I have all these different user roles that I've set up as I've tried to learn how to use AWS. So let's check here. We've got portfolio project role. I don't need that. I want to say so there's a contact form role. That might be it. So this right here might be kind of a janky way of doing this, because I should be able to more easily tell which one it is, but I'm assuming this is the contact form I set up. So to actually allow this user to use the SES services, we need to add some permissions to it. So let's attach a policy, and I created some policies here. Let's go ahead and I will show you what this one is. So you can actually go ahead and create different policies, and that's what I might have done here. Yes, so this is giving me access to all the different SES. I'll copy and paste this and show you how I did it. Okay, so when you come to your role, so these are all the permissions you have, you can actually create a policy. And when you do this, we're going to go with JSON. All you have to do is copy and paste this exact stuff that I put in here. And then you click next, 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 and then it'll add that. But I don't need to do that because I already created that policy. So I can just add that same policy to this user role. So let's go ahead and click that. And what are we doing here? Let me just come back. Okay. We got our roles. And we've got to find that contact form role right here. So this is the one we just created. We want to add permissions to it. Let's attach a policy. We want to attach this email policy that I just showed you. And let's see if that gives us what we need. Okay, so then you scroll down and you click attach policy. So now this role should allow us to use the SES services. So let's come back to the Postman. wherever it is. Okay, so this is the API gateway we just set up, and let's click send. There we go. So instead of getting a kind of weird 502, we're getting this 200. Okay, and we're getting that weird data that we're seeing here. So let's actually go and check my email and see what we ended up pulling in. All right, sick. So I just went over to my email, and you can see here this was sent at 7:55. So this is the same one that I just sent, and we can see that we got test. So look at that. It's already basically working. So now the only thing you have to do is take this endpoint here and put it in your project using Axios or whatever, which I can go over here in a second. And you're going to be able to send emails from your website to yourself as a contact form. Pretty slick. And you can send like 30,000 emails for free using this service. So, I mean, unless you're really popping off, you're a hot commodity, I doubt you're going to be getting 30,000 emails. So, yeah, pretty handy. So the next step will be setting this up in a project, which I'll walk you through right now. Okay, so now this is kind of the final step. I'm not going to really show any like styling or anything, but I'll go over how to actually set up some inputs, use Axios, and send a sample email to your contact form here. Okay, so let's come down here. This is kind of this is from the intersection observer video that I set up. The views are not doing great, but if you want to make cute little animations like that, go check that one out. It was the intersection observer video, so kind of handy. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a div here, and we're just going to add 3 inputs. Input, oops, and an input, and I'll create a button, and this will say send an email, and we'll save that. So that'll be down there. Great. I'll add some styling. Margin top 50%. That'll push it down a little bit for us. Okay. So let's come down here. Actually, so you're gonna want to use. I'm gonna use Axios. So you want to do npm install Axios, and this will install all the necessary packages you need. While it's doing that, if you're using Vue like me, in our data method here, let's go ahead and create an email data object, and let's go with name, and that'll be a string, and we wanted their email, that'll also be a string, and we want body text, and that will also be a string. Okay, so we have Axios installed. So inside our script tag of Vue here, you're going to want to do import Axios from, you guessed it, Axios. Okay. Okay, so we have our object here that we're going to send. We have, so this is basically our request body. See? So we have our request body, email, body text. This is our request body, email, body text. All right. So let's come down. Actually, let's go ahead and model these. So Vue is slick. You can use a V model here. Email data dot. This will be the name that sends. I'm going to copy this and come down here. V model. This is email, not the email, and this is body text. Okay. And actually, I'll show you how that works too. So if you do 2 brackets there and email data, save that. Oh. Okay, so there you go. You can see this object here that we created, and when I start typing in here, you can see that it automatically just kind of populates right there. So that's pretty handy. If you wanted to do like email verification, make sure that it's the proper structure, stuff like that. Super easy to do. For the sake of this, I don't think that matters. You're just trying to learn how to set up the bones of this thing. Okay, so in our methods, let's create our send email method. So I'm going to call it send email. And we're going to do Axios.post, since it is a post request. And this is going to take that API gateway endpoint that we created with the /send email. Right there. So basically the same exact thing that we set up in Postman here. Make this a little bigger. Okay, and we are going to pass in our email data. So to access that, you do this .email data, and we'll go .then, and come down here. We'll do response. We'll set it as an arrow function, and we will just alert email sent, and I'll log the response. Okay, and then I'll do a catch here, and if there's an error, set that up as an error function as well. So if you have an error, let's console log that error to see what the heck is going on, and come down here, and we will alert that it has failed. Email failed. Okay, so let's save that. Back up here, and to actually use this function, we're going to map into this button. So Vue has shorthand for click. So once you click that button, it's going to call this method, the send email method. The send email method takes that API gateway invoke URL that we sent with the send email endpoint. It is a post request. This is what our Lambda function is expecting. If this is wrong, it won't work, and you need to send the request body. If the request body doesn't match up, your Lambda function isn't going to know what's going on. It's gonna cause problems, which makes sense. So let's save that. No issues there. We're over here. So let's do, my name is Blake. My email is test email. And here is a message. So when I click this button, we should get an alert saying that it's sent properly. And let's see. Email sent. And let's go ahead and check. And there we go. Just pulled it up here. You can see that it has my name, has that test email, and it has my here is a message. So it was really as easy as that. So I mean, in under 30-something minutes there, we were able to put together a contact form. I don't know if you care enough about styling or anything, but this is how I set mine up. Just a little drop down. If you check out the intersection observer video, I kind of go over how I added all these little scroll in animations. This is a simple keyframe animation. I have videos on that too. So if you found this video helpful, if you end up using this in your current portfolio or website, whatever, comment down below. Please consider subscribing. It helps me out. It's free. Emphasis on that. It is free. And thank you to all you that have subscribed. I think we're up to like 135, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, so hope you found this helpful. Thanks.